Every now and then, the MVP race in the NBA just feels inevitable. One guy just clears everyone, with no debate and no drama. But this year, this was a clash between two very different MVP cases. On one hand, you've got Nikola Jokic, a 3-level genius who makes basketball look like clockwork. The other, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the smoothest operator in the league who carried the youngest team in the NBA to the top of the West. Both dominant and both extremely valuable, but only one will walk away with the trophy. But who will the voters actually select? We have yet to know, as it hasn't been revealed, and it won't be revealed for a little bit. The info will probably be revealed at the conference finals, and I'll probably make a video on who they actually chose. But for now, this is the cases for both sides. Alright, let's get into the video. But before we can get into that, only a small percentage of my viewership is actually subscribed. You guys know the deal. Please hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more. And without further ado, let's get into it. Firstly, we have to start with the rise of SGA. And let's be real, no one really expected this from OKC, at least not in this manner and certainly not this fast. But Shai, he has turned into a scoring monster this season, with nearly 30 points per game, an elite defense, and a deep mid-range bag. But more importantly, he's made everyone around him better. And this wasn't just a stat-padding year, this was leadership, control, poise, all wrapped in a cold-blooded scorer who led his team to 50-plus wins in a stacked conference. However, many argue that OKC is just foul baiting and Shai only gets his points through free throws. And that is pretty valid, because he does get sent to the free throw line pretty much more than anybody else. But he's also committing some of the most drives. So, some of those fouls are actually real, but some of those are really obvious flops. If MVP is all about teamwork and who's the most valuable for their actual team, some could argue that SGA, with all his free throws and foul baiting, could actually be the most impactful. Without SGA on the court, the team struggles. With SGA on the court, they bloom. But then on the other side of the coin, you've got Nikola Jokic, an absolute sheet stat samurai. He didn't talk about MVP, he didn't even campaign, he just kinda showed up and dropped a triple-double yet again. There were some stretches this season where you'd look up and go, wait, he has 19 assists and he hasn't even really done much? And that's the thing about Jokic. You don't really feel the dominance until you realize the game's already over. Denver dealt with injuries all this year, bench inconsistencies, but Jokic just never flinched. He's the entire system, he's the stabilizer, he keeps the team going, and he's the reason they were in title contention until that last series versus OKC, which they took to a Game 7. So with all of that in mind, other than points per game, that would obviously make him the MVP, because his team's impact when they don't have him versus when they do have him is incredibly different. This was once mentioned in a Jimmy High Roller video, I don't remember which one, I'll put it up if I can remember, but he mentioned that without Nikola Jokic, the Nuggets are one of the worst teams in the league, but with Nikola Jokic, they are one of the best. And another issue with this debate is that Jokic has nearly every single stat covered aside from SGA's points. So if you discard points alone, and you just go with the better candidate, it's obviously Jokic. But there's definitely more to MVP than just meets the stats. So now we have to figure out what the MVP even means to anyone. What are we even voting for? Are we voting for the best player, the best stats, the most valuable to their team, or just the best storyline? Shai may have had the narrative, but Jokic had the numbers. Both had the clear wins. So how do you choose this? Maybe it comes down to the comfort they show on the court. Jokic is known for showing no fear. He's safe and predictable in the best way. But SGA, he's new, still climbing, and some voters might have seen this year as a nice surprise, but not quite the MVP caliber season. But stats don't tell the whole story, which is why when Nikola Jokic had one of the craziest peaks we've ever seen, SGA is still in contention. Now I can't tell you who is MVP for sure, but we can make a very good educated guess. It is probably Nikola Jokic. However, voter fatigue may play a big role in this, and if that's the case, then if it's not Jokic, it's definitely SGA for a fact. And this race has been so incredibly close throughout the entire season that the voters who initially thought Jokic by a long shot may have decided to flip their opinions and choose SGA instead, especially with the victory that sent them even further into the finals. So if you give the MVP trophy to Shai, I wouldn't really argue too hard. He's earned it. He's leveled up on both ends, and he led his team this season. But Jokic, he's the reason your favorite team's window was closing this finals. He's still that guy, and maybe giving him MVP wasn't about this year alone, and maybe it was about accepting the fact that he has been truly unstoppable. So maybe this race didn't have a robbery, maybe it was just two players too good to ignore. But let's be real, part of why this race is even controversial had nothing to do with what really has happened on the court. It has everything to do with voter fatigue. Jokic already has 2 MVPs, he's already been called the best player in the world several times, and Jokic has already seen what it is to be the best. So when he continues to average triple-doubles, the response with a lot of fans wasn't just amazement, it was, "We've seen this before." Meanwhile, Shai has felt a lot different. He's felt fresh. He gave people a narrative instead of just being the obvious choice. Shai has been a breakout in terms of OKC's leadership, and he's been one of the best scorers in the league for a few seasons now. He's played elite defense and guarding some of the best perimeter players every single night, and to the fans, it felt like a new moment, like it was a new year to reward someone new. And honestly, that's where the tension was, not in the stats, not in the records, but in the unspoken question. How many MVPs is someone allowed to win before we just get tired of them? But now we have to consider the court of public opinion. So let's talk about the real MVP conversation, not about the one happening in the voting rooms, but the one happening in barbershops, podcasts, Reddit threads, and of course, NBA Twitter. Because that conversation, it wasn't unanimous, it was completely divided and emotional. To a lot of fans, this was Shai's moment. Every night he was dropping 30, locking up elite guards, and leading a team nobody saw coming. The Thunder were young, hungry, and winning, and Shai was the face of it all. You'd scroll on Twitter and see stuff like, "If Shai's not MVP, what's the point of the award?" YouTube comment sections were full of, "They don't just want to give it to someone new." And yeah, it wasn't a lot about Shai versus Jokic, it was about frustration with the system. Fans felt like the MVP was a closed club, where you either had to break basketball or have a pre-approved legacy to win it. So when Jokic already had 2 MVPs and a finals MVP, who's gonna take it again? So who was your MVP? Shai, the breakout star who flipped OKC's future, or Jokic, the big man who broke the game without breaking a sweat? Regardless of your opinion of either of them, who would you select if you had to take into account all the factors of a voter for the MVP award? Let me know in the comment section below, and as always, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.